This is a series of 100 films about Japanese foods that I've eaten, and this is a film about what housewives make for their families. A lot of this series is about foods I've eaten in a restaurant or have been pre-made for me. That's because I lived as a single male in Japan in his late 20s and early 30s. If you're unmarried and you don't have kids, you probably won't spend a lot of time cooking dinner in Japan. Why? Because eating out is cheap. In Asia, it's so much cheaper just to get takeout. Just pick up a bento box, take it home for $5, maybe $8 at the most, and you're done. And it's perfect for someone who is single and doesn't like to cook. I had a friend. She was a Chinese teacher in Yokohama. Now, this may have changed since then, but she told me she never cooked. She and her husband just ate bento boxes all the time. And that's possible to do in places like Taipei and Shanghai and Tokyo. However, if you have a family, there is a thing called economies of scale. By making a giant pot of something, you'll always save money, especially if you're feeding 2 or 3 kids anywhere in the world. On a not unrelated note, the concept of the homestay is a big thing in Japan. It's not unusual for foreigners, especially when they're younger, to live with a Japanese family to learn the language. Except you're there for 6 months or a year. It's not just a week-long band trip. Skijanai. In Japan, the women make most of the food, and the Japanese housewife is still a very common thing, although it is less common than it used to be, especially in places like Tokyo, where salaries haven't grown very fast since the early 90s. It is increasingly common for both mommy and daddy to go out to work, unless you're in the upper middle class and daddy makes an enormous amount of money, so mommy can stay home. However, even affluent moms have to prepare bento boxes. So what's funny about Japan is that the rice cooker has a timer on it. You add rice and water the night before, and it essentially acts like an alarm clock. Skijanai. Say you get up by 5:30, well, the rice is cooked. All you have to do is add a little bit of leftovers or pre-cooked foods like tempura from the grocery store, put it into little Takeshi's bento box, and he's good to go for the day. It doesn't even take that long. Everything in Japan is designed to be set up to make bento box construction easier. Also, something to note is that all Japanese television channels have a clock. All the morning programs have an identical, simple, sans serif font of a clock in the upper corner. It stays on the TV from basically 6 a.m. to about lunchtime, and the networks even keep it supered on the screen even through commercials. Of course, back home, CNN or news stations will have that, but not talk shows or cartoons. In Japan, they have neither 24-hour news channels nor anything resembling the Weather Channel. In Japan, cable television never existed. They went from 3 or 4 channels, or 10 channels, to satellite TV. And satellite TV isn't even that great. It's more like US cable TV from 1985, something like 30 or 40 channels. I've even been in hotel rooms where the remote control numbers corresponded to individual channels. If you hit 33, you got channel 3 twice. So to put that in context, 97% of all households in Japan only get 8 channels in total. And government officials go door to door to collect $200 per year for NHK, the public broadcaster. Everyone with a TV has to pay. Now back to food. Stews are a big part of winter cooking in the Japanese home. They help warm up the kitchen, useful as most of Japan doesn't have central heating. And one of the most common ones is called nikujagu, a stew of potatoes, vegetables, and meat boiled in a sweetened soy sauce broth and then served with rice. Another popular stew is nimono. It translates directly as 2 things. Basically, it's 2 things boiled in a sake and soy broth. And it could be any 2 things, fish and potatoes, pork and lotus root. Basically, the sky's the limit. And even boiled chicken is a huge part of Japanese cuisine, especially at home. And it makes sense if you never tried it. The chicken cooks a lot better than when you try to fry it. Finally, the most popular home-cooked meal is probably curry rice. Every home has the curry cubes that you use to melt and make your own homemade curry. It's very cheap, very easy to do. You fry up an onion, add some meat and some vegetables and water, boil through for 20 minutes, then add a curry cube. In a few minutes, you've got curry and rice for 5 people. And you can add some pre-cooked katsu from the grocery store. The whole meal takes less than half an hour. The word of the day. The word of the day is suki. It means I don't like it. This is the easiest way to explain gently to your host mom or dad what you really don't like say having natto for breakfast. So maybe you don't eat rice for breakfast. You can just say raisu suki. You may get funny looks, but they'll probably accommodate you. Next time. So that's it until next time when we look at salads that have an exclamation mark in their name. So until then, sayonara.